The Grand Canyon. This year we're celebrating 100 years of the national parks. And one of the national parks that holds the most incredible monument this country has to offer is the Grand Canyon. Therefore, it was only fitting that this year our hiking group returned to the canyon for its backpacking trip. The canyon holds many spectacular hikes, but we had always wanted to do the Thunder River and Deer Creek Loop off the North Rim. Our group, Don, Andrew, Trevor and myself, had hiked in the canyon a number of times. And this year we had a new member, Aaron. It's always important to apply for the backcountry permit as soon as reservations open up. Don sprang into action and once again secured the coveted permit for us. We chose late September as a compromise, as it's before the North Rim at 7,500 feet snows in, and the promise of cooler hiking temperatures as we descend some 5,000 feet to the bottom of the canyon, which can still reach 80s and 90s in September. Final preparations were made, flights booked, fitness readiness, check that one. Equipment checked and food assembled. The group had arranged to all meet up at Kanab on the Utah-Arizona border. Then we would head to the trailhead on the North Rim some 40 miles from Kanab via forestry roads for our 7-day backpacking adventure. So I hope you're all sitting comfortably and we'll begin. The group was going to rendezvous at Kanab, a small town on the Arizona-Utah border. From there, we would drive the 40-odd miles to the trailhead. We would start our hike from the rim to the river, and we'd do a loop in the clockwise direction. I flew out to Denver to meet up with Trevor and Aaron, and there we assembled all the food. The three of us then drove down to Kanab. Sorry you couldn't make it this year, Nick, but here's a memory for you. Crossing the Raphael Swell. Heading south now, and the road goes over the mountain at 7,500 feet, and snow. The meetup at Kanab, Don and Andrew had flown into Las Vegas and driven over. While they were waiting for us to arrive, they had done a walkabout looking at some of the local sites. After packing and repacking backpacks and distributing the food so that everybody looked like they had an even load, we were off. Well, sort of. We unfortunately got a flat on the way to the trailhead. It's good that we had some strong backs, as the first campsite had no water and we had to carry in extra water. The group ready to head out. A smiling Aaron didn't know what he'd let himself in for. Our total hike was to take us over the head wall and then down onto the esplanade, over the red wall, then follow a clockwise loop and then over to Thunder River, down to Pete's Creek, to the Colorado River, along the Colorado River to Deer Creek, and then back up to Surprise Valley, and then return up to the trailhead. So our first day hike was to go along the top of the cliff to this buttress, then head down the buttress, and then do a traverse between the headwall cliffs. And then when we came to this gully, fairly loose rock, head down the gully as it ran out onto the esplanade and the slick rock. And then from there it was a lot easier hiking as we hiked around on the slick rock to our first night's camp on top of the red wall. Working our way down the head wall on loose rock, in fairly steep in places, a little bit of scrambling here and there. You can see our destination off in the distance, and then I look back up at the head wall that we'd just come down. Well, the steep descent is over and we're taking a break here and just taking a look around this area called Indian Hollow. As we're descending, we're now coming into the much more arid area, the realm of sagebush and cactus. Don, our on-site geologist, has often explained that the canyon is like a walk through geological time, with the rock at the rim being around 270 million years old, and down at the bottom of the canyon at the Colorado River about 1600 million years old. So our first part of the descent has seen us coming down through the Coconino Sandstone, and now we're onto the Esplanade Sandstone. So some enterprising hiker has added to this anatomical piece of artwork. So we're arriving at our first campsite on top of the red wall, and we'll be able to look over that to the inner canyon and get our first glimpse way over in the distance of the Colorado River in Surprise Valley, where we'll be heading tomorrow. We had an amazing sight as a Condor came into view with its 9.5-foot wingspan just cruising along on the air currents. Beautiful sight. Part of the joy of sleeping out in the southwest is, of course, you sleeping out under the stars, and you get these beautiful dark sky situations and view of the heavens. Turned out to be rather a cool night, as you can see. Well, today's hike will take us over the Red Wall, fairly steep descent, and then we'll head into Surprise Valley. And then over to the ridge on the right there, where we'll get our first glimpse at Thunder River. Head down into the gully there with Thunder River. Thunder River then joins Tapeats Creek, and that's where we'll make our second night's camp. Starting our descent down the Red Wall. Taking a look back at the Red Wall where we'd camped on top of last night. We have now arrived in Surprise Valley, and we would take a left turn here, the start of our clockwise route, and heading next to Thunder River. Our first glimpse of Thunder River, which is a cave in the rock out of which water just pours. This is known as the shortest and fastest river in the USA. It really is a real phenomenal sight. Making a fairly steep descent down into Thunder River. Thunder River runs into Tapeats Creek, which we now get a glimpse of. A pretty steep descent via these zigzags to Thunder River, which was a most welcome sight. To cool off and dunk ourselves in. We arrived at our campsite alongside the river, and Chief Cook got to work here rustling up some grub for our supper. Time to filter some more water to replenish our drinking supplies, hang our food bags, hopefully out of the way of critters for the night. Heading down the canyon, and we'll be making our camp for the night on the shores of the Colorado River. Ants we hadn't bargained on, but these little guys searched out our prized Oreos and made a raid on it. Some unknown critters had also made a raid on our hanging food bags, but Don's baffle certainly baffled them. This was not the best looking leg contest, but a demonstration of how to modify Waldies for the water crossing. Yeah, send in the little guy first, see if he floats. This canyon was certainly full of contrasts, with these liking that like wet places and cactus that just like the dryness. Aha! The second swiftwater crossing, so we'll send in the tall guys first to see how deep it is. Intense interest when it was my turn to cross to see if I'd actually float downstream. Arriving at the Colorado River in another steep descent to arrive at the sandy area where we'll be camping for the night. This bird is known as a dipper, has the unique capability of walking under the water searching for food. Time to filter some more water and set up our shelters, actually just in time before a heavy rain shower came through. Leveling off your sleeping spot to within fractions of an inch is really taken seriously by some people. The benefit of meeting rafters when you're on the Colorado River is that you can usually get some beers off them, although these beers that they gave us seem to have strange flavors. Time for our evening meal, and we had this visit from a rattler, but when he heard what we were having, he turned tail and took off. We waved goodbye to our beer providers as they rafted off down through the Tapeats Rapid. Nothing like a good hearty breakfast to start the day right for our hike along the Colorado River. Today's hike is basically along the Colorado River until we come to Deer Creek. It's a lot of ups and downs, starting along the shoreline and up around creeks. A lot of washes to go around and climb over. Great view of some bighorn sheep on the opposite shore. Looking back to where we had come from, we're quite high above the river here, and then that green patch in the distance is where we're heading. That's Deer Creek. Dropping down into Deer Creek where our next night's camp will be. This is known as the Backpack with Legs. We're not saying who it is though. We've been asked often, when do we turn in for the night? Well, the rule is 8:30 or when it goes dark. Trevor was able to take these great night shots. Below our campsite, Deer Creek slides over a promenade known as the Patio before it plunges into the famous Narrows. These are carved from the hard-resistant Tapeats Formation. And they're truly spectacular, very graceful curves, beautiful contours. The Deer Creek then flows down to the Colorado River and plunges over one of the most spectacular waterfalls in the canyon, which is a couple of 100 feet high. We arrived at the overlook of the Colorado River, and this is where the spectacular Deer Creek Falls are. So we're going to drop down pretty steeply to the shore. Of course, the correct way to run the Colorado River is in the dory. That smell of cooking in the outdoors works up a great appetite. Our trail boss had us up for an early start to hike back up, so we'd be starting from our campsite in Deer Creek Valley, going up a side canyon and up into Surprise Valley. Then from there we would make our way to the base of the red wall, and then up the red wall to our campsite on top of the rim of the red wall. Our elevation gain today would be around 3,000 feet. The Colorado River altitude's about 2,000 feet, and the top of the red wall is around 5,100 feet. So we've made it into Surprise Valley, a very warm day. We're carrying extra water up because this is a dry night, and we'd also stashed some water at the campsite on the way down. Up the red wall, and then arriving at our campsite where we had previously camped on the way down, on top of the red wall on the rim. Really spectacular spot. Having a well-earned rest, and then we're going to cook our evening meal, set out our spots to sleep. And this we're having macaroni and cheese with spam, or called Nick's Delight. Savoring a beautiful evening with a delightful sun. This is our last chance to view the inner canyon before tomorrow we head up to the trailhead. We'll be heading from camp across the esplanade to the base of the head wall, and then up the head wall and along the rim to the top of the trailhead. So we've got about an elevation gain of 2,000 feet, and the trailhead's up around 7,200 feet. This is an example of cryptobiotic crust on the sand, which helps bind the sand together against erosion and wind. It's a living organism, but if it's damaged, can take years, hundreds of years to recover. The hard part's over. This is the top of the head wall, and we're making our way back to the trailhead and the parking lot. When we arrived here, the trees were green, but now you can see they've all turned beautiful fall colors. The end of another great hiking trip and a well-deserved beer before we pack up and head back. Don and Andrew to Las Vegas, and Trev, Aaron and myself will be heading back to Denver. First we had to get that flat tire repaired, and yes, I-70 was actually closed for a while because of the snow on our way back to Denver. And so that's the end of another great hike.